The shuttle tore through the exosphere of Allaris 4 like a thrown stone skipping over glass. Static snapped in the comms, and Lieutenant Daniel Reed sat rigidly in his crash harness, sweat lining the small of his back. There were no windows on this military pod, just a flickering monitor showing altitude, pressure, external movement. He watched the numbers roll down, each kilometer crossed, bringing him closer to the alien jungle and the thing they'd built to kill her. She was labeled an interstellar threat, exobiologist by training, rogue saboteur by accusation. Her name was Mara Keller, last seen 2 years ago when her diplomatic mission vanished on this distant terraformed moon. Then strange transmissions began surfacing, encrypted messages piggybacking on deep space weather pulses, decrypted to warnings about a bioengineered predator, a perfect killer that no longer obeyed its creators. Daniel's orders were simple: track Keller, confirm if she's still alive, extract her if possible, neutralize the threat if not. There was no mention of backup. The pod slammed into the canopy with a gut-punching jolt, hissed open, and he was running before the smoke cleared. Allaris 4's air was heavy, fragrant with resin and rot. The jungle hummed with a layered tension, birdsong threaded with distant roars that sounded too guttural to be avian. He activated his wrist implant, compass, scanner, oxygen monitor. The biosensor pinged something large moving east, fast, too fast. He found the first corpse 2 hours later, propped against a root web like it had tried to crawl into safety. Exosuit shredded, visor melted from the inside. The man's skin was patterned with a strange lattice of burns and punctures. No predator known to Earth did this. But this was not Earth. Night came without warning, black and instant, and Daniel climbed into a hollowed tree trunk and waited. He slept in 2-minute fits, hand never leaving the pulse trigger of his rail pistol. On the third day, he saw it. It was over 3 meters tall, sinewed like a jungle cat, but armored in something chitinous, reflective. It moved with terrifying efficiency, limbs telescoping, head shifting directions like a turret. And it was tracking something. Not him. He followed. 12 kilometers in, Daniel found what he assumed was the entrance to a research outpost. Overgrown, doors melted. The sign still bore the Earth Union crest, though vines had coiled through the letters. The trail led inside. Daniel swept the room with his pistol. The air smelled like ozone and dried meat. The predator had been here, and so had she. There were notes, dozens, scribbled across whatever surface Mara had found. Equations, sketches of the creature, modifications. He flipped through them, heart hammering. The thing had been designed to seek out and destroy any potential contamination vectors. Bioweapon gone sentient. But the notes suggested she'd been altering it, teaching it. She wasn't hiding from it. She was studying it. Drop the weapon. The voice behind him was hoarse, tired, real. He turned slowly. Mara Keller stood in the half-light, thinner than her mission files, but eyes burning with alertness. Her makeshift rifle aimed steady. "Daniel Reed, Earth Union Recon," he said, dropping his pistol to the ground. "I'm here to get you home." She didn't lower the weapon. "You led it here." "I tracked it," he said. "It didn't see me, but it's close." "You don't understand," she said, stepping forward. "That thing, it's not hunting me anymore. It guards me." He stared at her. "It was made to kill you," he said, flatly. "It was made to kill everything," she corrected. "But I cracked the imprinting pattern. It recognizes me as necessary, essential." "You domesticated it?" "No," she said. "I made it realize I'm not a target. Now it's something else, a companion, a protector." A shadow moved past the doorway. It was there, watching. Daniel didn't breathe. The creature stepped inside. No snarl, no posture. It moved to Mara's side, lowered its head slightly. Not submission, acknowledgement. He backed away slowly, his mind a blizzard of contradictions. She reached out, placed a hand lightly on its side. The muscle twitched beneath. but it remains still. It sleeps by my side at night, she said. And yes, it's killed before, but never without cause, and not since it accepted me. Daniel sat down slowly, his legs rubber. They sent me to kill it. You die trying, she said, simply. They stared at each other in the still, humming dark. Neither spoke for a long time. Then he asked, "So what now?" And Mara said, "That depends. Do you want to live through the night?" He didn't sleep well. The creature curled near the ruined threshold, breathing in deep, steady rhythms, like an engine cooling. Mara sat across from him, a knife in one hand, her expression unreadable. The air was tight with tension, but not fear. It was something stranger. The predator had been built to be unstoppable. It was now something else entirely. He would need time to understand how. And back home, they'd want answers. But for the first time in his career, Daniel Reed wasn't sure whose side he was really on. By dawn, the jungle had quieted. A viscous fog coiled between the trees, filtering the rising sun into slats of dim orange. Daniel rubbed the crust from his eyes, aching all over from a night spent sleeping against broken flooring and shattered instrumentation. The predator was still there, slumbering by the doorway, its massive chest rising and falling with measured rhythm. It had stayed like that for hours, unmoving, unthreatening, but never unaware. Mara was already up, crouched by a half-stripped console, coaxing power from its aged core using a homemade relay of copper wire and plant-derived insulation. She worked fast, hands practiced, hair tied with a scrap of old mission uniform. Daniel stretched carefully, watching the creature. "Does it have a name?" he asked. "No," she replied, not looking up. "It doesn't understand labels. It understands roles. Function. Imprinting." He stood and limped over. His right ankle throbbed from a twist the day before. He hadn't bothered checking it, but every step now came with a spike of pain. He made a note to test it properly. "You said it guards you, but that doesn't explain why it hasn't killed me yet." "It knows I'm calm," she said. "It reads posture, expression, scent. Fear agitates it, anger is worse, but if you don't posture as a threat, it won't respond." He glanced at the claws folded against its side, each the length of a machete. "It killed one of the engineers who tried to approach me last year," she added quietly. "He came with sedatives and restraints. It didn't wait for a second try." Daniel frowned. "How many of you were left when it went rogue?" She hesitated. 13, then 4, then 1. Yeah. He didn't ask how the others died. The silence answered well enough. Midday came and the heat swelled. Daniel used a lull to examine his ankle, swollen, blue around the outer ridge. He prodded gently. Pain sharp, local. Probably a grade 2 sprain, no fracture. He bound it tightly using a strip of thermoweave from his emergency kit. Mara didn't ask what he was doing. She just kept tinkering. By afternoon, the relay crackled to life. A dim power grid surged through the walls, flickering console lights and stirring stale air through rusted vents. "Good," she muttered, typing into a half-lit panel. "Now I can show you what I've actually been doing." He followed her deeper into the facility. Through corridors warped by time and jungle rot, she led him to what had once been a genetics lab. The equipment was scoured clean, purposefully so, but a second chamber beyond had been repurposed, cold storage humming. Nutrient gels stacked in orderly trays. Test vials carefully labeled with initials and sequence data. "You continued the research," he said. "Not the weaponization. Not anymore. I'm trying to reverse what they did." Daniel picked up a sample, reading the identifiers. Modified base pair sequences. Viral attenuation signatures. This wasn't casual work. "You're trying to disarm it. I'm trying to give it choice." He blinked. "Choice? It's not—" "It is," she interrupted. "Not sentient in the human sense, but aware, adaptive. It no longer kills on command. It waits. It assesses. It protects. You realize what Earth Union will do with this?" "Yes," she said. "That's why I'm not going back." Daniel stared at her. "You're staying out here. With it?" "Him," she corrected softly. He said nothing. They returned to the main hall just before dusk. The predator stirred at their approach, rising with slow, fluid motion. It moved beside Mara like a ghost, always at her flank. Daniel's comms flickered. He tapped the panel on his wrist. A blinking signal. Low-orbit relay. A scout ship had entered proximity range. Automated protocol from Union Command. Extraction window within 48 hours. "You're not going to convince them to leave this alone," he said. "Even if you talk them down, they'll send something worse. They always do." "I know." He looked at her. "Then we need to plan." That night he stood guard while she slept, half buried in a makeshift nest of synthetic fiber and scavenged blanket. The predator curled around the curve of her form like a barrier made of muscle and armor. The stars burned above in a dome of impossible silence. In the morning, she briefed him. "I've rigged a signal scrambler at the northern ridge. It'll mask our position if we power it through the base generator." Daniel nodded. "How long will it last?" 3, maybe 4 days, long enough to reroute attention. "To where?" She smiled faintly. "A different predator. I've already cloned a shallow behavioral shell, sent it to an abandoned sector. It'll mimic enough movement to fool their scanners." He looked impressed despite himself. "You're asking me to cover your escape?" "I'm asking you to pick a side. I was sent to protect the Union, and I'm trying to protect everything else." They worked in silence for the next 2 days, repairing outer doors, setting up decoys, transmitting falsified telemetry data. Daniel's ankle remained swollen, but manageable with compression and rest intervals. The predator began acknowledging him. Not friendliness, but tolerance. It would walk past him now without flaring its ribs or baring the retractable teeth. Once, while Daniel adjusted a roof array, the creature stood below and watched, motionless. And when he lost his balance and fell into the underbrush, it moved without sound and stopped 2 feet away, staring, then walked off. A test, perhaps. It didn't help him, but it didn't hurt him either. Mara said nothing about the incident. On the 4th day, the Union scout ship landed on the far hill, lights scanning through canopy layers. Mara stood at the threshold, the predator beside her. Daniel stood between them and the tree line. "What will you tell them?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're gone when I arrived. That I found a ruined lab, traces of genetic burn-off but no evidence of life. That whatever was built here consumed itself." She tilted her head. "And the apex predator?" He glanced at the massive form beside her, now motionless, massive eyes glinting in the morning sun. He said, "I never saw it." Mara reached into her jacket and handed him a sealed vial. "Take this. If they don't believe you, it's trace proof. Viral deactivation markers, decoupled genome. Proof the threat is over." He took it, pocketed it. "You won't see me again," she said. "Wasn't planning on it," he replied. He turned, limping slightly as he moved toward the trees, toward the ship's signal. Behind him, the apex predator exhaled a low, near-human breath and lay back down in the leaf rot beside her. It didn't growl. It didn't watch him go. It simply slept. The debrief was sterile, just as Daniel expected. He sat in the observation chamber of the Union's orbital station 6 days later, his ankle braced under uniform-issue slacks, a hint of bruising still pulsing with every shift of weight. A medical bot had confirmed it wasn't broken, just a deep sprain, but insisted on continued compression and rest. Daniel didn't argue. It gave him an excuse to limp, to stall, to think. The mission director, Commander Hale, barely glanced at the surface report he'd submitted. "Lab destroyed. No remaining tech, no surviving personnel." "You're sure?" "Yes, sir." She leaned back, sharp-boned, expression unreadable. "And the predator?" "Dead. I found biological remains, decayed, nothing functional." He had practiced that lie for days. Enough detail to be believable, just vague enough to avoid further questions. She tapped her stylus against the desk. "So what exactly do you think went wrong out there?" He held her gaze. "They underestimated what it would become." She gave no sign of suspicion, only checked the time and dismissed him. "You'll be rerouted to Dry Dock Command until your ankle's cleared. Try not to limp too theatrically." He left without another word. In the weeks that followed, Daniel grew used to the ache in his ankle and to the ache in his conscience. The Union moved on quickly. Keller's name was quietly archived, the Predator's files redacted and sealed. Allaris 4 was marked as a no-go zone due to unstable bioenvironmental variables, standard protocol for when they wanted to bury something. But Daniel couldn't bury it. Not the way that thing had looked at her. Not the way she'd held its attention with more authority than fear. Or the way it had slept. That part stuck with him most. It hadn't curled defensively, hadn't perched or hovered in a hyper-alert stance like most engineered killers would. It had slept. Deeply. Trustingly. He'd seen soldiers sleep like that only after weeks of fighting were over, once the guns stopped and the dust finally settled. That Predator didn't just protect Mara, it trusted her. Daniel took his reassignment quietly, spent hours studying field reports from other biological weapon zones, looking for any signs of similar patterns. He found none, nothing that came close. Until 3 months later, when a routine patrol ship vanished near the edge of the outer colonies. The last logs were garbled, but one phrase echoed through the corrupted data. "Contact Guardian, unknown, not hostile, tracking, watching." He knew the signature, not the words, the silence in between them. The Union sent a probe. It disappeared. They assumed pirates, issued a sweep order. Daniel waited a week, then used an old field agent override to pull archived mission telemetry from his trip to Allaris 4. He isolated the signal patterns Mara had used to spoof the Union's scans. It was a sophisticated rhythm of scatter pings and energy mimicry. The same pattern was now echoing across 3 separate moons. She was moving, not hiding, and the apex predator was still with her. It took 6 more weeks before he found a route. Not official. Smuggler jump lanes, unpatrolled by Union ships. He forged a requisition form citing biological contamination survey, loaded his personal gear, minimal weapons, a soft suit, rations, and one hidden ankle brace he'd kept out of habit. His ankle still twinged after long climbs. A reminder? The New World was drier than Allaris, rock formations pocked with wind erosion, sparse jungle curling along ravines. He hiked 2 days before the first sign, a broken trap camera, modified to flash red in moonlight, a silent invitation. He followed its direction. Mara found him this time. She appeared on a ridge, rifle slung but hands loose. The Predator stepped beside her after 3 seconds, silent as ever, larger now, or maybe just standing taller. "You're either here to arrest me," she said, "or to tell me something went very wrong." "Neither," Daniel said, lowering his pack. "I came because I think you're right." Her eyebrows lifted. "About?" He glanced at the Predator. "That it doesn't have to be a weapon." They stared at each other. The wind whispered dryly across the rocks. "You lied to command," she said finally. "Yes. Risked your clearance." "I didn't care." A long silence passed between them. Then she nodded. "You should see what he can do now." In her new camp, half built into a shallow cave, the changes were clear. The Predator was adapting further, reacting faster to environmental shifts, altering its temperature signature in real time, using terrain to obscure movement. But not once had it shown aggression. It even let him sit close. Not too close, but close enough. Mara had also changed. Not hardened, if anything, more relaxed. She didn't watch the sky every night now. She spoke softer, laughed once when Daniel failed to open a nutrient pack correctly. The Predator grumbled at the noise. She waved him off like a sleepy dog. Daniel's limp returned after a misstep near a ridge line, and Mara insisted on checking it. She unwrapped the brace, fingers probing with a gentleness that made him wince more from her presence than the pain. "No swelling," she muttered. "You still pushing too hard? Didn't want to miss your trail." She gave him a look that almost cracked a smile. Still stubborn. He glanced at the predator resting by the fire ring. "I learned from the best." That night, a storm swept over the cliffs, sudden and brutal. Wind howled through the caves, rain lashing like metal shards. Daniel helped secure supplies while Mara calmed the predator, speaking to it not in commands, but rhythm clicks, tones, gestures. By the time the storm broke, he was soaked and exhausted, but alive. He lay beside the fire, legs sore, back throbbing. The predator lay coiled at the cave's mouth again, its eyes half-lidded. He watched as it finally lowered its head, body relaxing into the earth, bleeping again, peacefully, as if it truly believed it was safe. And in that moment, Daniel finally understood what Mara had been trying to create. Not control, not obedience, but trust. Hard-won, fragile, unshakable. Something the Union could never replicate in a lab. By the time the rains cleared and the skies burned gold again, Daniel had been living among them for nearly 4 weeks. He adapted slowly, waking early to repair solar panels, scouting dry ravines for plant matter Mara needed for her genome stabilizer, washing gear in mineral springs. Every motion earned a moment of observation from the predator, never hostile, but vigilant. Mara had started calling it him months ago, but now she'd taken to referring to it in subtler ways. Not just a guardian or a companion, she talked about him the way one might speak of a dog that had once bitten someone, but now lay gently with a child asleep on his paw. One evening, as the three of them sat beneath the low canopy of a rock shelf, a distress beacon crackled to life across Mara's portable receiver. Daniel instinctively tensed, but Mara shook her head. "It's not Union. A civilian cruise ship went down during a test run through uncharted drift." He looked at the coordinates, far side of the canyon shelf, a 2-day hike. "They won't last long without shelter." "Then we don't wait," she said, already rising. He paused. "We're risking exposure." She looked at the predator. It was already standing. Daniel knew then that they would go, all 3 of them. They moved fast, traveling under starlight, guided by the creature's acute senses. Where Daniel saw a cliff, it saw a climb. Where he felt lost, it led the way. The terrain worsened after the first day. Sharp drop-offs, unstable shale. Daniel's ankle began to throb again by midday of the second day, but he gritted through it. Mara noticed, applied a cold patch from her satchel, and strapped his brace tighter. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They reached the crash site late in the night. The ship was torn along its hull, one wing embedded in the cliff wall. Smoke trailed like thread into the stars. 3 survivors. 2 conscious, 1 trapped beneath a crushed panel. A young woman, barely out of training, her leg pinned and clearly broken. Daniel scanned the injury. Swelling, abnormal rotation, femur fracture, bad but not catastrophic. "She needs a splint and evac fast," he said. "If infection sets in, we carry her," Mara said. The other 2 crew members hesitated when the predator stepped into view. "Is that—" one began, voice cracking. Mara raised a hand. "He won't harm you. Follow exactly, stay calm, and don't run." No one argued. The extraction took the rest of the night. The predator moved ahead, then backtracked, constantly, watching from ledges like a scout. It cleared brush before they reached it, marked paths. At one point, it even dug out a shallow trench to redirect runoff from a sudden rain pocket, sparing the stretcher from being soaked. When they reached the forward outpost beacon 3 days later, the Union had already picked up the signal. Daniel spoke to the pilot before they boarded. "Tell command you found them by accident. Their ship failed. You didn't see anyone else." The man nodded, too tired to question the details. The girl on the stretcher, now stable and sedated, gave Mara a lingering glance. "Thank you," she murmured. "I thought we were done." "You weren't," Mara said simply. The predator stood back, partially hidden beneath the trees but visible enough, watching. The ship lifted without a trace of what had happened below. Weeks passed, the seasons shifted, and slowly Mara's plan began to take shape. She hadn't just been surviving. She had been preparing. The stabilizer project she'd described to Daniel months earlier wasn't just about reversing the predator's kill directive. It was about replicating its adaptability. "Not to make more," she explained one night as they sat beneath the stars, heat flickering between them from a small fire, "but to learn how to make something that knows not to destroy, unless there's absolutely no other way." Daniel frowned. "They'll never allow it,"